place I came across you was Inside the Life of a Natural Pro with Layne Norton's
Layne Norton, yeah,
documentary.
yeah.
So I watched that, and you were there, and he was talking about how, I believe, you could correct me if I'm wrong here, was it you who suggested that he should be training legs 2 times per week instead of one? Do you remember this?
It's funny. I just told this story to one of my clients yesterday. I was guest posing at a show in Evansville, Indiana, and I was also judging. And it was Layne's first show. And he was a teenager, and he won the teen division and won the heavyweight division of the novice. So I was pumping up backstage for my guest posing appearance, and he came over and started asking me questions. I said, look, man, as a teenager, you're really good. You have a great upper body, but if you want to advance in this sport, you're going to have to bring your legs up to match your upper body. And Layne said, I really don't like working legs. And I said, look, if you want to go to higher levels, you're going to have to make friends with your leg workouts with squats, and you're going to have to endure a lot of pain. And you just have to accept that. And he took it to heart. And, when he did that interview with me for bodybuilding.com, I probably had not seen him in about 10 years. I had this 5-minute conversation with him backstage, and then I started seeing him popping up and writing for bodybuilding.com. I was working at Dr. Joe Klimzeski. I had a bodybuilding camp in Evansville, Indiana, and I was working for Dr. Joe at that camp, and Layne shows up with the crew from bodybuilding.com and interviews me, did that interview that you saw. And, I had no idea that tiny bit of advice I gave him kind of transformed his life. Because he told me at that point that when he did that show, it was like a bucket list thing to do. That he thought he was going to do one show, and he was good. And after talking to me, it changed his thought process. And he went on and set a world record in the squat and powerlifting.
So you mentioned you started back in the 80s. So when was it that you first became a WNBF pro?
My first contest that I competed in was in the NPC in May of 1983. I didn't know about any natural organizations until the early 90s. So I got invited into the WNBF in 1994.
Okay. So back in 1994 was when you transitioned to the WNBF. When did you earn your pro card?
I got invited into the WNBF. I competed in a smaller natural organization, the ANPPC, in 92 and 93, and I won their amateur world championships in 92, and I won their pro world championships in 93. And there was a writer from Natural Bodybuilding magazine at the 93 show, and so I talked to him and I said, do you think I'm good enough to compete in the WNBF? I'd seen the magazine, which at that time was called Natural Physique, and he said, yes, I'll talk to the guys. And then I got a call from Charlie Corella, and they invited me to compete in the WNBF.
Gotcha.
In 94.
So in 94.
In 98, I won the WNBF World Championships
Gotcha.
before they started doing weight classes.
Right.
And as far as I know, that was the biggest pro class ever. There were 42 guys.
Wow. So that was when Jim Cordova and some of these guys were competing? Yeah. Okay. So that was like the heyday. Because you also wrote for Iron Man magazine. Was that right?
Yes. I couldn't tell you what years, but probably starting in 2007. Okay. And I wrote for 6-7 years, wrote a monthly column for him.
I said, what was that experience like? Did you really enjoy writing?
Actually, yeah, I did. I kind of fell into it. What happened was I was talking to John Balick. I needed a sponsorship to go to the Team Universe. And so I threw that out to him, and he said, okay, well, we got our Iron Man magazine online up, and we need a bodybuilder to do a blog. And if you'll do a blog for us, help you out. And so I started writing my blog, and they liked my writing style, and then asked me to do a monthly column. It was enjoyable. The first couple of years, it was like super easy. I guess I paid attention in English class in high school. And so I'm actually just naturally a good writer, good grammar. Couldn't quote you grammar rules, but I can look at something and tell if it's correct or not. They said, hey, will you write a monthly column for us? And I'm like, yeah. The first couple of years, it was really easy. But then I started running out of stuff to write about. And I would agonize over, what am I going to write about next? After I'd wrote about every body part you could train, then I have to start coming up with other stuff.
Now, you're obviously in a much different place in your life now, but I want to just dive back into some history for a second. What is your most memorable contest? A contest that you feel that you've achieved something great, I guess you could say. And is there one?
Well, I would say there are 2 or 3 that really stand out to me. Number one was the first time I won the NPC Texas overall in 1988, as a drug-free athlete. Number 2 was the 1998 WNBF World Championships. That year I was coming up, I ruptured a bicep tendon
Oh,
11 months before that show. And so the day that I won that show was almost exactly 11 months from the time that I had my reattachment surgery. That was a big deal. I went into that thing just hoping that I could make the top 5. And to win it was mind boggling, really. And then the other one was in 2009 when I won the IFBB Masters World Championships in Poland. That was quite rewarding.
so you won WNBF World Championships overall? Was that the overall title?
Yes, that was before they started having weight classes in the pros. And I was weighing probably 170-ish and competing against guys that were, 225, 230.
So these guys were obviously would be classified as heavyweights now.
Yeah, yes.
Right. How tall were these guys? They must have been what, like over 6 feet, I would assume.
Not much over.
Really? So these guys are just genetic elite.
I mean, some of them were 5'10" to 6. I say 5'10" to 6'2". Yeah, there weren't really any like super tall guys in WNBF at that time.
That's heavy for a natural bodybuilder, even at 5'10", right? Because you were you about 5. You're about 5'9", Dave.
No, 5'7" at best.
So even 170 at 5'7" is pretty, depending on how you look at it, right? Because I've seen really high level natural bodybuilders, professional, that compete in like 160s and they're like 5'9". But I mean, structurally, things are different from competitor to competitor. I don't know if you have some input on that, but.
Well, January 2000, I went out to Santiago to train with Frank Zane for a couple of days.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was quite an experience. It was fantastic. But he told me that he won the Olympia 77, 78, 79, and he was 5'9", and he said he weighed between 180 and 185 at those shows. I mean, it could never happen in the IFBB today. When he told me that, that was extremely encouraging to me. I mean, in terms of getting shredded and just having the natural genetics to have the right shape and to be competitive with guys that were way, way bigger than he was.
Like you mentioned, he was about 5. Did you say 5'9"? Frank Zane's about 5'9"?
Yes.
You're also shorter and then competing in the 170. So that's like, obviously you're natural and he was not natural, which is, he's mentioned that, right? It's not, there's no secret, right? So it is encouraging. Even to this day.
He was very upfront about that.
Yeah. And so that's encouraging even to this day, hearing that, right?
Well, when I first started in bodybuilding, my 2 big heroes were Arnold and Frank Zane. And I knew I could not look like Arnold.
Right.
But I looked at Frank Zane and thought, I can look like that guy. I have that sort of build that I can look like him. And he's won the Mr. Olympia.
So how long were you there for? Did you say a couple days, like 3 days?
Yeah, 2 days I trained with him.
What did you guys do? Do you remember?
We worked out together, and then there was just a lot of bullshitting going on.
Right.
He told me stories. And here's the funny thing about Frank Zane. Do you know he's a musician?
Yes.
Yeah. So I sing and play guitar. And so we got on that subject, and he said, oh, let me show you my music room. And so he has guitars and basses hanging on the wall, and he had a whole rack of harmonicas. So he goes, yeah, my favorite harmonica players are, I can't ever remember the guy for Blues Traveler that was the lead harmonica player. And then he said, Kim Wilson of the Fabulous Thunderbirds. And I said, oh, I know Kim. He's like, how do you know Kim? I go, well, when he's in Austin, he comes by my gym and works out. He's like, have you ever talked to him? And I said, yeah, we usually sit down in my office if I have time and talk for 10, 15 minutes. And he goes, so you really know him? I'm like, yeah, I really know him.
That's so funny.
Like, okay, I'm going to autograph a picture. I give you a couple of books. I autograph. You give them to him in my card in here and tell him next time he's in San Diego, give me a call. He can come over and work out. I'm like, take it easy. He's just a guy.
Right. He got starstruck.
Starstruck with Kim Wilson.
That is so funny.
Was like really funny to me.
Because people get like that about him. That's why it's hilarious, right? So even stars get starstruck, right? What year was that? Yeah. I wasn't sure if you mentioned
January 2000.
2000. Okay, gotcha. So he was still looking pretty sharp at that time. Like, I mean, he was in contest, like he was in the 70s ready, but he was still looking good.
Oh, yeah, he was in pretty good shape. We worked out together, and he was, as I recall, 57 at the time. And he told me that when he turned 60, he was going to get back in top shape and do a photo shoot for Ironman, which he did, and got back in really good shape.
That's right. He has a picture. I think it was 64 even, if I remember correctly. He looked really like he was in really good shape for 64. But was there a period, I guess, before then where he was not looking like that? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he looked, when I trained with him, he looked good. Looked like a guy was in good shape, but not like you would, take your shirt off and do a photo shoot. Good shape.
Gotcha.